Hi, I'm Emilie Nouveau here at GovCon to talk to you about our core initiative, Easy Out of the Box, and how it's improving Drupal's content editor experience. I'm Diane Nova on Drupal.org, and I became part of this initiative because of my experience as a co-lead on the Layout Initiative, which added Layout Builder to Drupal core. And I'd love to see everyone's responses to a few questions in the chat section. Could you all chime in with where you're located, if you're using any of the Easy Out of the Box modules, and if you've contributed back to Drupal in any way? And I'm really looking forward to hearing more about everyone's experience here. So while you do that, here's a rough outline of what I'm going to cover in the session. I'll talk about the Easy Out of the Box initiative and how it's improving the content editor experience for Drupal users, and how the modules involved are being used by the National Science Foundation. Then what we're working on next in the initiative and how you can help out. So what is Easy Out of the Box? The Easy Out of the Box initiative is trying to make the editorial experience clear and empowering from the moment that Drupal is installed. So the initiative is composed of 3 important features for content editors that I'll talk about further in the next few slides. So first we have Claro. Claro is the new administration theme for Drupal. And Christina, Sasha, and Lowry are the Claro leads. They're the ones driving most of the work in getting Claro built out and stable, and then into Drupal core by default. But you can use Claro right now. So Claro in a nutshell. Claro is based on the Drupal admin design system. It's a redesigned administration theme that touches on things like contextual links and the administration toolbar as well. So Claro is a clear and modern administration theme for the backend of Drupal. So here's a view of some of the changes to the content search page. The goal for these administrator pages is to be as accessible as possible with high contrast and a solid content hierarchy to support screen readers and keyboard users. And here's another screenshot. This is of the new node edit form. The clean and open UI can make a really big difference for editors who spend quite a bit of their time on these edit forms. This also shows an example of the media library widget in Claro, which comes in from the media initiative. There's also an in-depth talk from DrupalCon Amsterdam where we go into more detail about the design, and if you're interested in the details of the design system or the Clora redesign, you can view that. It's called Designing the Future of the Drupal Admin UI. So looking at the history for each of these initiatives can give a good idea for how long these heavily volunteer-based efforts can take. The plan for Clara was discussed sometime around DrupalCon Dublin in 2016, but the first design proposals came around a year later in 2017. From there, the theme was developed as a contrib theme until it made it into core in 2019. And we're still working on getting Clara marked stable so that it can become the default Drupal admin theme, and then it would be enabled by default in all standard Drupal installations. So next up is Layout Builder. The layout leads are myself and Tim Plunkett. And Layout Builder is a layout tool in Drupal core, which allows content editors to easily build new page layouts ranging from structured, repeatable content layouts to one-off marketing splash pages. Layout Builder is stable, but it isn't on by default yet. That's one of the things that the Easy Out of the Box initiative is aiming to fix. So here's an earlier mockup for the Layout Builder UI, and you can see the areas to add new sections. So basically, for those who haven't seen how Layout Builder works, you go to edit the layout, then you can add a section. That when you select a section, you can select the number of columns usually that you'll be adding to the section, although it can be different types of layouts as well, like a gallery or a slider or an accordion. And once you've selected that type of section, now you can add blocks to it. So here you can see an example of a 2-column section, and blocks can be added to each of those columns. blocks can be dragged around the page, so that can simplify layout building for content editors. Accessibility was a really important consideration for a layout builder. So this screenshot shows how an editor can tab to a move link and then move the blocks without needing to use a mouse. So this enables visually impaired editors to use a screen reader to edit and lay out content. And the way that that works is when they select move, they can see or hear the region title. So it will say the second section and then the name of the region. And when you create a new section, you get to name it. So this allows it to be easier for people to know what section they're editing, whether they're reading it or having it read to them. And the layout initiative, it really began a long time ago, early on in Drupal's history, but the plan that led directly to Layout Builder in Drupal core was decided on around spring 2017. After a plan was made, a demo was created by the summer of 2017, and then the experimental module was added to core in winter 2017. And the module was marked stable for production use in spring 2019. And now we're working on getting Layout Builder on by default in a standard Drupal install. Now for media. The media leads are Adam and Marcos. And media is the initiative covering media assets and the media library to manage them. This initiative allows editors to create a digital asset library with relevant metadata that can be organized and filtered by that data. So here's a walkthrough of how the media library works for content editors. You can see that media is stored in this library, and it's easily added to content just by selecting there, and then it appears in the field. So the media library allows you to search based on metadata and filter your media and then find the media that's most relevant. So it's exciting to say that the National Science Foundation is using these modules to improve the experience for their content editors in their new beta site. So this is a blog post for the Science Matters blog. So content like this can be arranged with Layout Builder. The header photo can be stored as a reusable media asset in the media library, along with the metadata like the image, credit, and the caption. So here's an example of a content editor and the ability to create a basic page, and you get the welcoming modern background through Claro. And content editors can edit page layouts without HTML knowledge, so they can create a larger highlighted area, and then they can create a smaller area that's a view of related content. So here's an example of how Layout Builder is working for the beta NSF site. So this is where an editor can add a section and select a number of columns, and then they can add components like the Science Matters view. And once it's saved, this is an example of how that would look. So at that point, you have some highlighted content, you have related blog posts, and any other updates. And if an editor realized that they wanted the beta updates to go above the Science Matters post, all they would have to do is click the Layout tab and then drag that section up above the other one. So using media, the NSF can share multimedia items easily through the site. So they can specify who the image credit belongs to, what different department, and also any license information and sometimes download information for the media assets. So, for example, a page that has a bunch of background images that are available for people to use can give a larger file download. And here's an example of how media is being searched and filtered on the NSF site. And so all of these are using different pieces of the Easy Out of the Box initiative. So the searchable, shareable multimedia assets for media, clear modern design enabling editors from Claro, and the easy page building with consistent branding from Layout Builder. So what's next for these initiatives? So for Claro, one big item that's next is a content creation menu proposal. So this is changing how the main elements in the editor toolbar will work, and the proposal is at that link there. So this is a good place to contribute back if you just want to chime in on the proposal and offer suggestions or different use cases for how you would find this helpful. And then different UI improvements. So this first draft was presented at DrupalCon Amsterdam, and it's a possible future UI design for Clara. And right now you can get a lot of these design changes that go kind of further than Clara does in the Gen admin theme. And so for Layout Builder, the big things that we have next are full site layout editing. So this is one where we would love to hear how everybody would like to use this. So here's a proposal in the mockup, which shows how you would see a different region like the header and be able to edit the layout for the global header in line with editing your inline content. So in this proposal, you would select which area of the page you're editing for layout before you move into it, and then you would get an alert that shows that it's a global region and that any changes would be reflected throughout the site, and then you could move into editing the header region as if it was just any other layout builder region. So you would add your sections and add blocks that way. Same with the footer, and then the content that you're used to editing with Layout Builder would work in the same way that it works now. And if you have any thoughts on that proposal or any other ideas, or would just like to talk about how you would like to use Layout Builder in a full site layout editing context, you can go to that link to that issue and chime in there. And then another big thing that we need to figure out before this is standard in Drupal install are block visibility controls. So this is an example of the block editing page and how you might see different blocks appearing, but essentially block visibility controls would decide what conditions need to be met for a certain block to be visible and how we would display that information to a content editor. So if you have thoughts on the user experience of that, that's a good link to chime in. And then what's next for media and organizing your assets? So one big push is improving media's usability. So this was an example of something that was discussed in one issue where there's a bug and the modal is just too small to actually see what's inside of the modal. And there are a bunch of little issues like that that it would be great to get people working on and just improving the usability experience. And then there are other accessibility things for media. So, one example is providing tools to manage audio and video transcripts. It would be really great if we could easily add these transcripts to media and provide good tools for that. So that's an issue there. If you're interested in accessibility for media, we also have many other issues in the roadmap. So another place that it would be great to get help in the initiative is in marketing and getting the word out about these modules. So we have an issue for new logos and promotional copy and slide decks for the initiative, and you can see that issue there. So if you're interested in contributing in the design or marketing area, that's a good place to do that. So as for why contributing is great, it helps to be a part of the community. It can help to build your resume and help your career. And definitely, gratitude is a really big thing. Everyone's really happy to work with everyone else and help each other out. So it's a great community and a great initiative to be involved in. We're all really friendly, I promise. So, who can contribute? We need designers and user experience professionals to work on the look and feel, marketing for presentations and copy and social media posts. We've had a really big push on accessibility. All of these tools need to be very accessible to make the best experience for content editors. So, anyone who's interested in that area can definitely jump in and help out and work on those issues. Documentation, we could definitely use more documentation for layout builder and just examples of how to make certain things, certain layout pages, marketing splash pages, things like that. And definitely developers. We could use developers to build out a lot of these features that we're working on. Yeah, and we do have issues for novice and new users, and we have issues for people who just want to offer opinions about how they're currently using these modules and how they would like them to work. That's actually a really big thing. Is that sometimes we could just use more information on what people's expectations are. So we have weekly meetings in the Easy Out of the Box channel in Drupal Slack, and they happen on Mondays at noon Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific, and 1700 UTC. And that's a good place to hop in and contribute and see what we're working on next, um, see how you can help out. And also in the issue queue, we have the Easy Out of the Box tag, the Clara tag, the Media Initiative, and the Layout Builder tags. Um, so yeah, thank you. And I'd love for you to come work with us on the Easy Out of the Box initiative. And yeah, if you have any questions, I would love to answer them.
Thank you, Emilie. So we do have one or two questions in the Q&A section that I will go ahead and read off. If there is anybody who would like to ask their question out loud, just go ahead and request access, and I will go ahead and enable you. So the first question is, when will media be able to be embedded into CK Editor without custom or contrib modules?
So as far as when, I think when it's enabled in standard would be a good answer to that. I think that media will be able to be embedded using CK Editor at that point. But I think as far as a time frame, I think that's more about getting more people helping out and contributing to the media initiative.
And there was one question I think you may have kind of answered with your last slide there, but I'll read it off anyway in case you have more to add. Someone posted that they are interested in contributing, but what is the first step?
Yeah, so I think the first step would be getting into the Slack channel, easy out of the box in Drupal Slack, and then just introducing yourself and saying what experience you have and what you'd like to bring, and then we can find issues for you to help work on.
Do we have any more questions? You guys can either post them in the Q&A or just ask for access, and I'll be happy to unmute you. I'll give you. I'm not seeing any other ones come in. I'll go ahead and ask one. I think one of the things that I know I have always felt like I would like to see more of is documentation, right? And whenever you want more of, that's always a good way to say, well, maybe I can do some of that. And so do you recommend for someone who might be looking for specific ways to contribute to documentation in general? I do find it still a little confusing to understand exactly where to best build some of that out or to look for where you might want to post that type of thing. Do you recommend looking in issue queues or just sort of putting stuff in the actual docs area of Drupal.org? Do you have recommendations for that?
Yeah, so I think kind of a combination. I think going to the docs Drupal.org area and finding the documentation for that specific module. So Layout Builder, we have a section for Layout Builder documentation. That's a good place to start. I think also just hopping into the Slack channel and talking to the people who are working on things and asking them if they know where the documentation is at. And also, if it's difficult to find, mentioning that it's difficult to find so that maybe somebody can figure out how we can bubble that up in the content hierarchy to make it easier.
Thanks.
Yeah, we could definitely use more documentation work. So I'd love to hear that anyone's interested in working on that.
It's definitely one of those things that's like on my list. This is where I could totally do something, and it's a matter of finding time and really, understanding how to best sort of get plugged in. So I think some of those steps, I think, as you mentioned, sort of jumping onto Slack and just getting connected with people to ask the question can be helpful as well. Are there any more questions? Okay. I'm not seeing anything, so we'll just kind of give it another minute here as we close out. Thank you, Emilie, for your time today.
Yeah,
For
thank you so much.
attendees, just want to remind you, we do have our keynote that begins on the stage at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Hope to see you all there. And reminder that we've still got the networking and some of the other spaces if you want to pop in and connect with other people. So again, thank you for your time, Emilie. Really appreciate it. The session space will stay open and as long as there are folks in here, if anybody wants to hang back and ask any other last questions. But
Okay, thank
yes,
you.
thank you.